In every tragedy, there comes a moment when a single decision changes the course of countless lives. This is the story of a young woman whose kindness lit up every room she entered, and the hidden darkness that slowly crept into her world without anyone realizing how dangerous it had become. What follows is not just a crime story, but a heartbreaking reminder of how emotional manipulation, silence, and ignored warning signs can lead to devastating consequences.
Alexandria Ali Castile's story begins long before the tragedy that reshaped countless lives. Born on September 11, 1997, in St. Louis, Missouri, Ali grew up in a home filled with warmth, structure, and encouragement. Her parents, Cindy and Keith Castile, devoted themselves to providing a supportive environment where both Ali and her younger brother Andrew could thrive. From the beginning, Ali stood out, not just for her intelligence, but for her kindness. She was the type of child who offered help before being asked, who made others feel seen, and who carried a calmness that followed her into adulthood. As she entered school, her natural abilities quickly became clear. Ali performed well in every subject, often recognized as one of the brightest students in her class. Yet academics were only one piece of her identity. She was athletic, energetic, and involved in multiple extracurricular activities, including cheerleading, track and field, and even golf. She was also a proud member of the National Honor Society, a title she earned through dedication and consistency. What people admired most about Ali, though, was not her achievements, but her spirit. Teachers described her as a student who lifted the energy in every room. Friends remembered her as someone who listened more than she spoke and who could sense when someone needed comfort. This nurturing quality showed early when she took small jobs babysitting and dog walking, not for the money, but because she genuinely enjoyed caring for others. Her generosity extended beyond her community. During high school, Ali traveled to Peru and Africa as part of volunteer programs designed to teach underprivileged children English. She returned from both trips changed, more grounded, more aware of the world, and more determined to contribute to it. She began practicing yoga, running half marathons, and cultivating confidence that showed in her bright smile and approachable personality. One of the most meaningful relationships Ali formed during her teenage years was with her best friend, Maddie Norris. Their connection ran far deeper than typical friendships. Maddie often described Ali as the sister she chose, someone she trusted completely. They shared dreams, fears, and plans for the future, each supporting the other through the ups and downs of adolescence. In 2016, Ali graduated high school and made the decision to attend the University of Mississippi, also known as Ole Miss, to study business administration. She was thrilled by the opportunity to start a new chapter of her life, surrounded by a vibrant campus culture, rich traditions, and strong academic programs. Although leaving Maddie behind was difficult, the two promised to stay close, and they kept that promise as best they could. When Ali arrived at Ole Miss, she quickly adjusted to university life. She met new friends, including Elizabeth and Morgan, and began strengthening her independence. Her days were packed with classes, fitness routines, and occasional campus events. She thrived in an environment where she could explore both academic pursuits and personal growth. Like most college students, Ali sought connection and companionship. It was during this period that she met Brandon Thiesfeld, a student 1 year older from Fort Worth, Texas. Brandon came from a privileged background. His father, Daniel Thiesfeld, worked in the medical field, and Brandon had grown up with access to resources, outdoor activities, and a stable home environment rooted in Christian values. On the surface, he appeared confident, athletic, and charming, qualities that many people found appealing. Ali noticed him instantly when they crossed paths at a bar, and something about him drew her in. To her, Brandon seemed mature, mysterious, and different from the people she had known in high school. Their connection developed quickly, though the tone of their relationship was uneven from the beginning. While Ali was open, caring, and invested, Brandon often held himself at a distance. He responded to her affection with inconsistent attention, making Ali feel unsure yet hopeful. Their personalities contrasted sharply. Ali was grounded, warm, and empathetic. Brandon, on the other hand, carried an air of entitlement and occasional arrogance. Some students remembered him for his dismissive attitude and disrespectful behavior toward women. Rex Rava, a fellow student and dorm neighbor, developed an immediate dislike for him based on these tendencies. Brandon's past also contained troubling signs. In April 2017, he was arrested for public intoxication and possession of a fake ID. Another legal incident had also been recorded but later sealed. These were early indications of a pattern, but Ali did not know the full extent of his behavior, nor did those close to her. Despite the red flags, Ali found herself drawn in. She believed in giving people chances, and she saw potential in Brandon. Even when he acted distant, she stayed patient. When he showed her small bits of affection, she held on to hope that their relationship could become more stable. Over time, the inconsistency became clearer. During their sophomore year, after a series of late-night messages from Ali expressing worry and confusion, Brandon blocked her. When Maddie visited campus, she noticed that Brandon treated Ali with indifference. Maddie felt uneasy, but Ali brushed off her concerns, believing that Brandon simply needed space or had other stressors in his life. Their communication resumed later, as often happened in on and off relationships, and Ali welcomed him back with her usual optimism. She was someone who saw the best in people, even when they didn't show it. Brandon never matched her emotional investment, but Ali remained convinced that he cared in his own way. As Ali entered her junior year, she continued balancing her responsibilities with the emotional strain of her unpredictable relationship. She confided in very few people, meaning her family and friends only had glimpses of what she was truly experiencing. This secrecy, combined with her ability to mask her pain with a cheerful exterior, meant that many warning signs went unnoticed. The early stages of their relationship reveal a powerful but painful truth. Ali was a young woman full of light and potential, while Brandon's behavior reflected emotional distance, manipulation, and disregard, elements that would eventually form the foundation of a much darker chapter. Ali's life at Ole Miss continued, but beneath her smile, something fragile had begun to develop, a quiet emotional struggle that no one around her fully understood yet. That struggle would soon intensify in ways she could never have anticipated.
Ali's life at Ole Miss continued to appear bright from the outside, but privately her emotional world was becoming more complicated. Her relationship with Brandon had shifted from occasional confusion to a pattern of emotional strain that she struggled to explain even to herself. Despite her strong academic performance, busy schedule, and supportive friendships, a part of her remained anchored to Brandon's unpredictable behavior. To most people, Ali was the same cheerful, focused young woman who balanced classes, fitness, and friendships with ease. But those who knew her best, like Maddie, could sense that something was different. Ali stopped talking openly about her feelings, especially when her relationship with Brandon grew tense. She protected Brandon's privacy more than her own well-being, and she often excused the ways he hurt her emotionally. What her friends didn't see were the countless nights when Ali cried alone in her room, trying to understand why the boy she cared about so deeply treated her so indifferently. Ali believed that if she just held on a little longer, things might improve. She didn't want to judge Brandon harshly, and she didn't want anyone else to do so either. This made it difficult for her to reach out for help or express the depth of her emotional pain. As the months passed, the emotional gap between them widened. Brandon's communication became even more inconsistent. Sometimes he responded warmly, other times he ignored her for long stretches, only to reappear suddenly as if nothing had happened. Allie forgave him every time, convincing herself that everyone had flaws and that relationships required patience. But what she didn't recognize was that she was slowly becoming trapped in a cycle of emotional dependence. The turning point came in April 2019, when Allie began to fear she might be pregnant. The possibility filled her with anxiety, but she believed she needed to tell Brandon immediately. She sent him a photo of an inconclusive pregnancy test and waited for his reaction. Brandon's response was not supportive or reassuring. Instead, he distanced himself even further. He made it clear through his messages that he would not stay with her if she was pregnant. His words were cold, blunt, and dismissive. Allie felt devastated. She had hoped for understanding or at least concern, but his reaction only deepened her fear and loneliness. She tried to talk to him in person, hoping that face-to-face conversation might soften the tension, but he avoided every opportunity to meet. While Allie struggled with worry and uncertainty, Brandon spent his time searching for information online related to abortion options. Over the next few weeks, he grew even colder in his communication. Unknown to Allie, his behavior had shifted into something darker, something no one around them could have predicted. Meanwhile, Allie tried to stay focused. She enrolled in a summer course and stayed on campus instead of going home. She also worked as a fitness instructor, teaching classes that kept her busy throughout the week. Her parents visited her during the summer, and they spent memorable days together, laughing, eating out, and enjoying time with their daughter. To them, Allie seemed happy and fulfilled. She never hinted at the emotional storm she was quietly enduring. Despite the pregnancy scare, Allie still hoped the situation could be resolved peacefully. She believed Brandon would eventually talk to her, that they could work through the confusion together. She didn't want anyone to judge him. Even as Brandon pulled away, she continued to give him the benefit of the doubt. During this time, Brandon occasionally reached out, sending messages that gave Allie just enough reassurance to stay hopeful. His words were inconsistent, sometimes kind, sometimes sharp, but Allie held on to the possibility that everything would settle down once they met in person. Yet, Brandon had no intention of meeting her in a meaningful way. He avoided her questions, ignored her feelings, and kept himself emotionally detached. Still, Allie tried to maintain normalcy. She attended her classes, spent time with friends, and planned future goals. From the outside, she looked stable and strong, but inside, she was balancing fear, confusion, and emotional exhaustion. The pregnancy scare weighed heavily on her, not only because of the uncertainty, but because of how Brandon treated her during the ordeal. She didn't resent him. Instead, she felt guilty for causing tension. She convinced herself that she was overthinking the situation, and she desperately wanted to make things right. This internal struggle created a quiet pain that she carried alone. She didn't realize that Brandon's emotional distance was not simply the result of stress or confusion. His behavior was becoming increasingly alarming. In the weeks leading up to July 2019, Brandon's online activity showed searches that hinted at violent thoughts. Allie had no idea. She only knew the boy she cared about so deeply was pulling away at the worst possible time. As the summer went on, Allie remained hopeful that things would work out. She continued checking her phone constantly, waiting for Brandon's messages, believing that understanding and closure were still possible. She expressed worry to Maddie occasionally, but even then she downplayed the severity of the situation. Allie's optimism was one of her greatest qualities, but in this case it left her vulnerable. The emotional dependence that had developed over the years now placed her in a position where she could not fully see the danger she was in. She wanted love, clarity, and honesty. She wanted the relationship she believed still existed beneath Brandon's coldness. But the truth was much more complex. The tension between them reached a quiet peak in mid-July 2019. Allie still believed a conversation would solve everything. She hoped that meeting Brandon in person would finally give her answers she deserved. She had no idea that the days ahead would become the most critical turning point of her life. Her friends didn't know how serious things were. Her family didn't know she was struggling. And Allie herself didn't know that the emotional pain she had endured for so long was about to lead her into a situation from which she would never return. The final days before July 19th passed unremarkably, but beneath the surface, the story was shifting into something much darker. A chain of events was forming quietly, shaped by secrecy, emotional manipulation, and the tragic hope Allie still held in her heart.
July 19, 2019 began like any other day for Ollie, but it would become the most critical night of her life. She spent the evening with friends at a bar in St. Louis, trying to relax and enjoy a summer night after weeks of emotional stress. Surveillance cameras later showed her stepping outside, phone in hand, deeply focused on her messages. It was clear she was communicating with someone important, and that someone was Brandon. Ollie's friends didn't notice when she slipped away from the bar. She didn't make an announcement, didn't draw attention. She simply left quietly, believing she was going to finally get the clarity she had been waiting for. For Ollie, this felt like the moment to resolve the tension, to talk face to face, to understand what Brandon truly wanted, and to explain her feelings honestly. She didn't want conflict. She wanted answers. Brandon agreed to meet her that night, but he chose a remote location, an area near a lake surrounded by campsites, wooded trails, and quiet stretches of road. It was a spot not many people visited late at night. Around midnight, Ollie met Brandon there. What happened between them during that time remains unknown to this day. There were no witnesses, no recordings, no detailed messages sent during the encounter. Only the silence of isolated woods and the dark water of the lake stood around them as they spoke, if they spoke at all. What is known is that Ollie went into that meeting still believing that a real conversation could bring understanding. She had always given Brandon the benefit of the doubt, even when he didn't deserve it. She believed that if she showed kindness, honesty, and vulnerability, it might encourage him to open up as well. In the early hours of July 20, between approximately 2:15 and 2:30 a.m., nearby residents heard gunshots echo through the wooded area. At that moment, Ollie's life came to a tragic end. Brandon fled immediately, leaving behind the person who had cared for him beyond measure. He drove off in his truck through the darkness, following rural roads back toward his familiar surroundings, while the silence of the woods settled over the scene he left behind. The next morning, around 10:30 a.m., police investigating the reported gunshots discovered Ollie's body near an abandoned fishing camp, roughly 20 miles from the University of Mississippi. The location was quiet, overgrown, and isolated, far from where anyone would usually walk or explore. The officers found her purse nearby, containing her identification and driver's license. However, her phone could not be traced. This gap slowed the early stages of the investigation as detectives scrambled for every possible lead. Meanwhile, Brandon behaved in ways that shocked investigators once they pieced together the timeline. Instead of panicking, hiding, or isolating himself, he acted almost completely normal. He went bowling with friends. He chatted casually. He did not appear distressed. This calmness, especially given the gravity of what had happened just hours earlier, deepened suspicions. That same day, Brandon wrote a letter to his parents. In it, he confessed that he had done something terrible and admitted he expected to either be arrested or die soon. The letter would later become one of the most significant pieces of evidence in the case. By the time investigators identified Ollie, they also began narrowing down potential suspects. Brandon quickly became the primary focus based on Ollie's messages, their known relationship, and the confession letter they eventually found. Detectives tried contacting him multiple times, but Brandon avoided direct communication. Ollie's parents were notified soon after her body was identified. The news shattered them. Just days earlier, they had visited her on campus, sharing food, stories, and laughter. Now they were faced with a reality no parent should ever have to endure. Her friends, including Maddie, were equally devastated. They replayed every message, every memory, every unanswered question in their minds, trying to understand how someone as loving as Ollie could meet such a fate. Within 24 hours of the discovery, Brandon arrived at a friend's house openly carrying a firearm and drinking beer, behaving in a detached and unnerving manner. His refusal to meet investigators, paired with his increasingly suspicious behavior, pushed authorities to issue a warrant for his arrest. Through a combination of surveillance footage, witness sightings, and digital tracking, police traced Brandon's location to Memphis, Tennessee. The manhunt escalated rapidly. On July 21, a coordinated group of 12 officers and 7 patrol cars surrounded Brandon's vehicle. When they apprehended him, he was found wearing a shirt stained with blood. Inside the vehicle, police discovered a firearm that would later be confirmed as the weapon used in Ollie's killing. Brandon was transported back to Mississippi, informed of his rights, and placed in custody. During questioning, he admitted wandering around Oxford on the weekend of the crime, but refused to provide further details. His silence only reinforced investigators' certainty that they had the right suspect. Brandon's family quickly hired a defense attorney, and his father publicly stated that his son was innocent. Still, the evidence continued to build. The University of Mississippi issued an immediate suspension, distancing itself from the tragedy and ensuring Sampa's safety. When the autopsy was completed, investigators discovered something that added even more emotional weight to the case. Ollie had not been pregnant at the time of her death. The pregnancy scare that had caused so much fear, confusion, and tension was based on a misinterpretation of an inconclusive test. This fact was not immediately shared publicly, but it created an additional layer of heartbreak. Ollie had suffered emotionally and physically because of the fear of a pregnancy that never existed. Brandon's cold reaction, his distance, his anger, all of it was tied to something that was not real. Detectives continued putting the pieces together: the meeting at the lake, the gunshots, Brandon's flight, his confession letter, the blood-stained clothes, the discarded evidence, and the emotional history between the two. As the investigation deepened, the truth became increasingly difficult to deny. Ollie had gone to meet someone she trusted, hoping for clarity, closure, or understanding. Instead, she walked into a situation shaped by emotional manipulation, fear, and Brandon's escalating instability. The days surrounding the crime painted a clear picture of a young woman searching for peace and a young man avoiding responsibility at every turn. And now that Brandon was in custody, the case was ready to move toward its next chapter, the legal battle that would determine his fate and reveal even more about the tragedy that had unfolded.
इन्वेस्टिगेटर्स अब तक साशा सामजिदिन के केस में मल्टीपल एंगल्स एक्सप्लोर कर चुके थे, लेकिन पजल का सबसे क्रूशल हिस्सा तब सामने आया जब उन्हें उसके पर्सनल डिजिटल फोल्डर्स का एन्क्रिप्टेड सेक्शन अनलॉक करना पड़ा। ये सेक्शन पहले अनरीचेबल था, लेकिन टेक्नीशियंस ने फॉरेंसिक रिकवरी के जरिए उसका हिडन डेटा रिकंस्ट्रक्ट कर लिया। जिस वक्त उन डॉक्यूमेंट्स को खोला गया तो ऑफिसर्स को पहली दफ़ा एहसास हुआ कि इस केस में जितना दिख रहा था उससे ज़्यादा कुछ अंदर छुपा हुआ था। फाइल्स के अंदर टाइम स्टैम्प्ड लॉग्स थे, जिसमें साशा के चलने फिरने, रात को फ्लैट से निकलने और वापस आने के एग्जैक्ट टाइमिंग्स रिकॉर्डेड थे। ये टाइमिंग्स उसके सीसीटीवी मूवमेंट से मैच हो रहे थे, लेकिन एक पॉइंट पर डिस्क्रिपेंसी नोटिसेबल थी। कुछ एंट्रीज उन रातों की भी थीं जिसमें कैमरा फुटेज में कोई एक्टिविटी दिखाई नहीं दी। ये इनकंसिस्टेंसी इन्वेस्टिगेटर्स को फोर्स कर रही थी कि वो उसके बिल्डिंग की वायरिंग और बैकएंड सिस्टम फिर से चेक करें। जब टेक्नीशियंस ने सर्वेलेंस सिस्टम का डीपर ऑडिट किया तो पता चला कि कुछ नाइट्स में कैमराज मैन्युअली ऑफलाइन किए गए थे, सिर्फ कुछ मिनट्स के लिए, फिर वापस ऑनलाइन। ये मैनुअल इंटरफेरेंस सिर्फ तब पॉसिबल होता है जब सिस्टम को डायरेक्ट एक्सेस मिल जाए। इस डिस्कवरी ने सस्पिशन को एक नए लेवल पर पुश कर दिया। ऑफिसर्स को लगने लगा कि साशा या तो खुद सिस्टम ऑपरेट कर रही थी या फिर कोई और उसके बिल्डिंग के अंदर या बाहर से कैमराज मैनिपुलेट कर रहा था। इन्वेस्टिगेशन टीम ने फिर एक्सेस लॉग्स और डिवाइस मैक एड्रेसेस ट्रेस किए। एक अनआइडेंटिफाइड डिवाइस रिपीटेडली बिल्डिंग नेटवर्क से कनेक्ट हो रहा था, स्पेसिफिकली उन्हीं नाइट्स पर जिसमें लॉग्स और सीसीटीवी फुटेज मिसमैच कर रहे थे। डिवाइस के सिग्नल स्ट्रेंथ से एस्टिमेट ये हुआ कि कनेक्शन बहुत नज़दीक से हो रहा था, मतलब या तो बिल्डिंग के अंदर किसी फ्लैट से या बिल्डिंग के बिल्कुल कॉर्नर के किसी रेस्ट्रिक्टेड स्पेस से। जब ऑफिसर्स ने इस इंफॉर्मेशन को कंबाइन किया तो उन्होंने बिल्डिंग स्टोरेज रूम्स और लॉक्ड मेंटेनेंस क्लॉजेट्स चेक करने का डिसीजन लिया। एक स्टोरेज रूम जो नॉर्मली अनयूज्ड था, उसमें फ्लोरिंग के नीचे एक छोटा सा कंसील्ड गैप मिला। ये गैप प्रोफेशनल हाइडिंग स्पॉट नहीं था, मगर इस कदर टाइट था कि कोई छोटा डिवाइस या रिकॉर्डर वहां रखा जा सकता था। फॉरेंसिक टीम ने जब वहां से रिकवर्ड स्मॉल डिवाइस को इंस्पेक्ट किया तो कंफर्म हुआ कि ये एक पोर्टेबल वाईफाई रिले था जो कैमरास के सिग्नल्स इंटरसेप्ट करने के लिए यूज हो सकता था। इस फाइंडिंग ने इन्वेस्टिगेशन को ड्रामेटिकली ट्विस्ट कर दिया। अब ये सिर्फ साशा का केस नहीं था, ये कोई ऐसा इंडिविजुअल था जो उसकी मूवमेंट्स ट्रैक कर रहा था और सर्वेलेंस मैनिपुलेट कर रहा था। ऑफिसर्स ने इमीडिएटली उस बिल्डिंग के पुराने टेनेंट्स की लिस्ट मंगवाई और क्रॉस चेकिंग शुरू की कि कोई ऐसा इंडिविजुअल तो नहीं जो टेक्निकल नॉलेज रखता हो। रिमार्केबली एक नाम रिपीटेडली रेड फ्लैग्स रेज कर रहा था, एक फॉर्मर टेनेंट जिसे ऑपरेशनल इक्विपमेंट और नेटवर्क हार्डवेयर का काफ़ी एक्सपीरियंस था और जो एरिया से बिना नोटिस के रीलोकेट हुआ था। इन्वेस्टिगेटर्स ने उसके पिछले रेजिडेंसेस विजिट किए और नेबर्स से बात की। कुछ लोगों ने मेंशन किया कि वो अक्सर रात को बाहर रहता था और कभी-कभी अपने कार ट्रंक से वायर्स और गैजेट्स निकालता हुआ देखा जाता था। इस इनफॉर्मल टेस्टिमनी ने भी सस्पेशन को स्ट्रेंथन किया कि कोई एक्सटर्नल टेक्स हैवी इंडिविजुअल साशा को टारगेट कर रहा था। इन्वेस्टिगेशन टीम ने फिर साशा के फ़ोन के बैकग्राउंड रनिंग ऐप्स इवैल्यूएट किए। एक एप्लीकेशन जो हार्मलेस लगती थी, एक्चुअली रिमोट मिररिंग परमिशंस होल्ड करती थी। ये ऐप साशा ने कब इंस्टॉल की थी, ये ट्रेस करना मुश्किल था क्योंकि टाइम स्टैम्प्स टैम्पर्ड लगे। फॉरेंसिक एक्सपर्ट्स ने डिटर्मिन किया कि इंस्टॉलेशन फोर्स्ड अपडेट के थ्रू इंजेक्ट किया गया था, जब साशा पब्लिक कैफे वाईफाई यूज कर रही थी। ये एविडेंस कंफर्म करता था कि कोई बाहर का इंडिविजुअल उसकी डिजिटल एक्टिविटी मॉनिटर कर रहा था। ऑफिसर्स ने जब इस एंटायर पैटर्न को टाइमलाइन पर मैप किया तो ये क्लियर हुआ कि इवेंट्स रैंडम नहीं थे, ये टारगेटेड सर्विलेंस का स्ट्रक्चर्ड पैटर्न था। लेकिन सबसे अलार्मिंग चीज तब सामने आई जब इन्वेस्टिगेटर्स ने साशा के फाइनल नाइट के फुटस्टेप्स ट्रेस किए। दिखाई तो ये देता था कि वो अपने फ्लैट से सिर्फ थोड़ी देर के लिए बाहर निकली थी, लेकिन रिकवर्ड लॉग्स सजेस्ट करते थे कि उस वक्त भी मॉनिटरिंग डिवाइस एक्टिव था और एनवायरनमेंट में अननोन सिग्नल सिग्नेचर्स डिटेक्ट हो रहे थे। ये सिग्निफाई करता था कि कोई उसके आसपास मौजूद था। जब ऑफिसर्स ने साशा का केस फाइल क्लोज करने से पहले फाइनल रिव्यू किया तो उनको एक डिटेल दोबारा नजर आई, वो डिटेल जो पहले उनकी नज़रों से बच गई थी। बिल्डिंग के बैक साइड कैमरा फुटेज में एक शैडो रिफ्लेक्शन था जो फ्रेम के बिल्कुल एज पर मूव करता दिखाया गया, लेकिन क्लैरिटी कम होने की वजह से पहले इग्नोर हो गया था। जब फोरेंसिक टीम ने इस रिफ्लेक्शन को एनहांस किया तो कंफर्म हुआ कि कोई फिगर बिल्डिंग की बाउंड्री के बिल्कुल कॉर्नर पर मल्टीपल नाइट्स अपीयर होता था। आइडेंटिटी अभी भी अननोन थी, लेकिन प्रेजेंस अनडिनाइबल थी। इन्वेस्टिगेशन टीम ने कंक्लूड किया कि साशा का केस सिर्फ एक इंसिडेंट नहीं था, यह लॉन्ग टर्म ट्रैकिंग और कंट्रोल्ड सर्वेलेंस का रिजल्ट था। ऑफिसर्स अभी भी उस अननोन इंडिविजुअल को ट्रेस कर रहे हैं जिसका कनेक्शन कैमराज, वाईफाई रिले, नेटवर्क एक्सेस और साशा की टाइमलाइन से मैच होता है। जब तक वो इंडिविजुअल पकड़ा नहीं जाता, ये केस ऑफिशियली अनरिजॉल्व्ड कंसिडर होगा। सब्सक्राइब फॉर मोर।
If you're still here watching, thank you. Before you go, please subscribe to our channel, Dark Frame Stories, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another real-life mystery like this.